This happened when I was 19. It was when I went back to my hometown to visit my parents. My parents live in the city, and it can be a bit of a pain in the ass to park at home sometimes. I often end up parking halfway down the street and walking. On the night this experience took place, I parked down the street and a little around the corner. I visited them, had dinner, caught up, and then I said my goodbyes at around 10 p.m., probably a little closer to 10:30. So to get back to my car, I had to head down a street and through an alley. My car was parked just at the end of that alley. I got through the alley fine and back to my car. As I was about to get in my car, I noticed something in the alley. It wasn't dark enough for it to be pitch black out, plus it was summer, so there was still some faint natural light out, even at that time of night. I saw something in the alley which looked to be the shape of a human, and it was heading down the alley towards me and my car. It was almost swaying. It was the strangest thing. Quite eerie, actually. It was twisting and wiggling. It didn't look normal at all. I thought that it was trouble, some kind of weirdo or someone trying to distract me from something. I decided to get in the car quickly and get the hell out. That figure made me feel really uncomfortable. It's so hard to explain, so I just feel like asking a question at this point. Can humans look distorted? It's like he or she was glitching out, like it was a few frames behind real time, real life, or reality. It sort of jiggered, left to right. It was hard to make out because it was dark, but as soon as my eyes noticed that thing in the alley, it was pretty much unmissable. I strained my eyes and I saw it. I saw that thing so clearly. I wish I got out of there sooner than I did. But I was almost hypnotized by that thing. When it reached the end of the alley, it was showered in the light of 2 streetlights. Only then, when it was fully illuminated, was I able to see that thing and what it was. And to be honest, I still have no clue what I saw that night. I'll just try my best to explain it. It was completely pink, like a skin tone. It was like looking at meat. That's all I can really describe it as. It was just some amalgamation of meat crudely shaped as a human. I tell you, when I saw that thing, my spine ran ice cold. It was completely unexplainable. I was overcome with anxiety after seeing it. Even though I could have just as easily gone back to my parents' house, I decided to drive all the way home. It was like I was repelled. I needed to be so far away from it. I knew that just looking at that thing wasn't good. It was innate, like some kind of primal voice inside me told me to just get out of there, and fast. Something inside me told me that if I went back to my parents' house, then that thing would follow me and get in somehow. I know I sound completely crazy, but that's just how I felt. I had to get far away, so I did. When I drove off, I looked in my rear-view mirror and noticed that the thing from the alley wasn't pursuing me. It didn't make me feel any less terrified, though. A few weeks later, I decided to pay my parents another visit. I guess that's because I couldn't get the incident in the alley off of my mind. It was still fresh. I decided to mention my experience to my mother, and I was surprised by her response. "Oh, you saw that down by the alley, right?" I said, yeah, that's where I saw it, and I mentioned the person's house I saw it near. You know what, that makes sense, I guess. You've been away for a while, so you haven't heard. The son of the Ishikawa family got hit by a car, and he passed away. It was a head-on collision, hit and run. Sorry to put it in a bad way like this, but maybe that was what you saw. Some kind of manifestation of that poor guy's final moments. I was shocked, but I guess it kind of made sense. My mum has always said to me that she can see things. And whatever she can see, I guess maybe I got something like that from her. We often talk about what we have seen. I don't know if my mother's theory is correct though, but it's the only thing I got. I'll never forget that night. I want to share with you some stories that I have heard in my line of work, my experiences, and some of my co-workers. They aren't paranormal or anything like that, but they are strange enough to fit in here. So an acquaintance of mine introduced me to a part-time job that related to the courts. The job was to go in and clean houses and apartments which had been either repossessed or the tenants had been evicted from. I'll give you a quick rundown of how this works. An enforcement officer will approach the court with a warrant to repossess or evict. Once granted, they will expel the tenant. In most instances, the properties have already been abandoned, and the tenant is nowhere to be found. On the off chance that there is someone there, the enforcement officer will knock or ring the bell. Then if there's no answer, a locksmith will gain access. A court bailiff is present too. At the bailiff's command, we are then sent in to clean and empty the property. We get everything we can out of there, from furniture to garbage. It's not all that different from the scenes you see on TV. In most cases, eviction is prompted by the lack of rent payments by the tenant, but in some other instances, tenants can be evicted due to complaints from neighbors. This is more common in apartment blocks. You won't believe some of the things I've seen and heard in this job. It's shocking. I just want to give you 4 examples. Number 1, Pigeon Man. Once the bailiff had got the door open, we entered, and at that moment several pigeons came flying straight at us. It really startled me, but it wasn't a patch on what I saw next. In that apartment there must have been about 50 pigeons. The floor was completely white with their droppings. It didn't smell half as bad as some other places I've been in though. The droppings were about 10 centimeters above the floor level. They were almost fossilized, and they looked like stalagmites. It was hard to open the door in the property due to all the excrement caked on the floor. We had to take a sliding door off its runners just to gain access to the living room. When we finally got in there, we were all shocked by what we saw. In the center of the room, there was a mosquito net. Beneath the net, there was a single mattress on the floor. Next to the mattress was a household bucket, which appeared to be used as a toilet. It seemed like the person who lived there lived within the confines of that mosquito net. The apartment outside of the net seemed to belong to the pigeons. I had a lot of time to question how someone could live like that as I was scooping up the pigeon waste. I didn't see the tenant, and I'm kinda glad I didn't. Number 2, organized crime. There are all sorts of people in apartment blocks. Seemingly everyday people live different lives behind closed doors. Low-level gangsters and Yakuza members are often evicted due to their status. They are often given prohibited items to hold for higher-ranking members. Because their organizations don't really make a habit of putting their low-ranked members in comfortable places to live, they often apply for the cheapest public housing possible. And when they get kicked out for causing trouble or arrested for their crimes, we come in. When we come in, we always find something. I'm not surprised anymore by the sight of knives and swords. I found a few guns, homemade ones too. Oh, and that thing about the little finger, where new members cut the tip off of their little finger. Yeah, I found evidence of that. It wasn't in a low-level member's place though, it was a high-end apartment. I opened the fridge in one apartment and found a finger submerged in some kind of liquid in a jar. It looked like it was in alcohol, and there was a date on it too. I found 5 jars with fingers in that fridge. The police were brought in and we were sent home. I wonder if this Yakuza member had a hobby of collecting the fingertips of low-level members who made mistakes in their organization. I wondered if that guy was still out in the public. Maybe I've walked past him on the street. Maybe he's in prison. Or maybe he's not walking the earth anymore. Number 3, religious people. More than half of the people who get evicted are those related to religious groups. When cleaning the apartments and houses of these people, we often come across books and pamphlets. These religious groups seem new and frightening. I wonder about the people who join these cults. I guess cults would be a more appropriate word. I wonder if they joined because they had no money and they were promised financial gain and happiness by the leaders, or is the reason they have no money because they joined? I cannot ignore that it isn't a coincidence that lots of these religious followers often end up evicted and penniless. The cults either ruin them, or their debt was so insurmountable that they turned to religion to get them out of their troubles. Number 4. In this line of work, there's no bigger shock to the system than coming across a body. Yes, I'm talking about someone who seemingly had no other options left and decided to end things themselves. I've seen 5, and as soon as one is discovered, we immediately call off the job. It's our job to go back into these homes after bodies have been cleared, and there is an atmosphere. You cannot pretend that there isn't. If they told me that it would happen so regularly, I wouldn't have accepted the job. I think lots of people wouldn't have. You never know what's behind each door when you take a job. I've seen reddish brown stains that could only be described as blood all over a hardwood floor. I've seen the contours of a human face in those stains. I have never felt closer to death. We had to work with that face in the wood in the room with us. The floor was stripped after we were finished though. In this line of work we often have repeat visits. You might even say that we have repeat business. I have visited the same housing complexes several times. One of the most painful things about this work is going back to the same place. A year after I found a body in an apartment, I was called back to the very same apartment. Another tragic case. Another person chose to end it all. We were all silent that day. I believe that coincidences occur, but that was very, very unpleasant. That felt like something more than a coincidence. A few months after the second death, I heard the apartment was on the market again, and there was rumors of it being haunted. I quit the job a few months after, but I often think about it. Sometimes I pray that there isn't a third or fourth victim. That kind of job makes you wonder how well you know the people you live close to. Neighbors in the same building as you. A lot of stuff goes on behind closed doors that we have no clue about. Have you ever heard of the reign of animals? It's so weird. It's a rare meteorological phenomenon where flightless animals fall from the sky. It's been reported in many countries throughout history, even here in Japan back in the 9th century, but it goes back further than that. In the 1st century AD, Romans, notably Pliny the Elder, documented storms of frogs and fish. Various things have been reported to fall from the sky, including frogs, fish, torn up bird carcasses, corn, blood, gold coins, all sorts. Back in June of 2009, there was an incident in which tadpoles fell from the sky in Nano City, Ishikawa Prefecture. It happened a few times within 1 month. Some theories claim that tornadoes or storms whip up clusters of these animals and carry them for miles. Doesn't really apply to all cases though, I think. To this day, nobody knows why or where it originates from. Is there a geological place where this happens? If so, it's an unsolved mystery. I read an out there theory where someone thinks that they come from some kind of floating city in the sky like Laputa. I think that's quite a romanticized theory. Not the most plausible, but probably the nicest. I don't like to think about that theory anymore though. I heard something from Saudi Arabia which gave me the chills. It happened not that long ago. On the 5th of January back in 2014, something else fell from the sky. It happened in the city of Jeddah. An unknown number of human body parts rained down on the streets of Jeddah. Apparently, they covered quite a wide area of the city. Imagine that. The initial theory in this case was that the body parts belonged to people who hid in the wheel housings of passing aeroplanes. Perhaps they did this in an attempt to cross borders, but apparently at 2:30 a.m., When the body parts began to fall all over the city, there were no reported passing planes over the city. That's pretty weird, huh? I wonder if there'll be an increase in the number of mysterious events and if more mysterious things will fall from the sky. I read somewhere that there was a whale in a jungle 50 feet from the sea in Brazil. It's baffled scientists. There was a killer whale found in the woods of Alaska too. I really wonder sometimes, what the hell's going on up there? Okay, this just happened and I'm literally shaking. I forgot to turn my alarm off. I usually get up weekdays at 5:30, and I have a bad habit of forgetting to turn off the alarm when I'm on annual leave, a day off. So I had stayed up later than I was used to, expecting to sleep in on my day off. When the alarm went off, I instinctively reached out for it to shut it off. I was fumbling along my bedside table, groping for the phone. And that was when I got the shock of my life. My hand landed on another hand. I felt someone's hand near my phone. I screamed and jumped up. I live alone, by the way. I hit the light on the bedside table, and I saw a hand, which I believe to be male's, retract down behind the bedside table. I can't contain how freaked out I am right now. I can still remember how rough the skin on that hand felt. I'm sat in my car currently writing this as I consider calling the cops. I don't think there was a person in my bedroom because surely I would have seen them as I ran for it. I guess they could have hid somewhere if they were fast enough, but I have no clue where. And I don't really have a big apartment. I'm wondering if I'm losing my mind. I can't go back in my apartment until the sun's up, I know that much. I just came out with my phone and my keys. Was I just overly tired? Is it fine to go back in? Something about the touch of that man's hand made it feel all too real. It's like I can still feel the warmth of his fingers on my hand. I want to go take a shower, but I think I'm just too creeped out. Maybe I shouldn't go back home for a while. But I can't just sit out here in the car park. Maybe it was just a dream? What do you think? Sorry for the rambling. Maybe I'll go back in. Note from Jay here. This was posted back in 2020, and there have been no further posts from this author. I work in renovations. Occasionally, we are sent to jobs in the middle of nowhere to work on really run-down houses. Usually on bigger jobs, I go with my partner. We usually do internal repairs and sometimes work in tandem with other companies who do the external repairs. On the job in question, it was just me and my partner. The exterior work had already been completed, so it was just us. When we got there, we realized that the place had been abandoned for a long time. As soon as we got in, we saw something. A red crayon began to roll down the stairs. It bounced and gathered speed and fell at our feet. I thought to myself, that's kind of weird. It was weird, but in these abandoned houses, it's pretty common to see graffiti and stuff like that, so I didn't pay it much mind. I thought that some kids who had snuck in had left it behind, but as it came from upstairs, I just called out and said that if there was anyone in the house, they better leave now before we start work. There were a few more crayons lying on the stairs. It was pretty unusual. I didn't get a response when I called out, so I thought the coast was clear. The building we were in was a 2-story house. Our plan was to work separately. One to work upstairs and one to work downstairs. Upstairs didn't seem all that appealing to me, so I was grateful that my partner said he'd be heading up there. After a few minutes, I heard a hell of a commotion coming from upstairs and my partner shouted out, and then I heard the thunder of his footsteps coming down the stairs, coupled with his panting voice leaking expletives. He looked my way and affected a laugh. I called out to him and said, "What's going on, man?" He said that while he was working up there, a crayon rolled along the floor, and when he noticed it, he naturally looked up to the direction it came from. He said that he saw a girl stood there in the hallway, staring at him, and as he shouted out in shock, then kind of staggered backwards away from her, he looked away to see where he was going, and when he looked back, the kid was gone. Well, that was a shock. Sounded more like a movie, but I've worked in many weird places with my partner, and honestly, I've seen some messed up things, so I thought to myself, why would he lie about it? It's kind of embarrassing, you know? After he told me that, it was kind of like the atmosphere in the house shifted. I was a little spooked. I didn't know what he saw, but I didn't like the way it sounded, like there could be someone in here with us. After a while, I called out to him to ask how he was doing, and he said he felt sick. I did too, to be honest, so we decided to step outside for a little break. As we were heading out of the front door, my partner stopped and stood like a statue, seemingly fixated on something. If you looked carefully at the wall at the end of the corridor, you could see the faint outline of a hidden door. We both remarked on how careless we were to have missed it as we approached it. We decided to get in there and see what was beyond the hidden door. The door didn't have a handle or a knob. It looked like once it was shut from the inside, it would take some trouble to get in or out. After we kicked, pushed, hit, and pried, we were able to get in there. What lied beyond the door was a dark, dark room. As light spilled in, we noticed a familiar sight. There were crayon scribbles all over the room. Everywhere we looked, it said the same few words. They were written over and over again, and those words were, "Daddy, stay out." I don't think I need to tell you what we were thinking at that point we saw that. I mean, my friend saw an apparition. We have a secret hideout or something worse with some childlike writing on the wallpaper in the dark room saying, "Daddy, stay out." I don't know what happened in that place, and I really don't want to guess either, but I'm assuming it's something really bad. My partner and I left, and we just never went back. We just took a loss on that job. Sorry in advance, but this isn't the longest story. It was a very frightening experience though. It happened last summer. One day my mum came to me and said, "Hey, who were you on the phone to last night in the bathroom?" I said I didn't know what she was talking about. I didn't remember having any calls in the bathroom. I mean, it's not the usual place I go to take a call anyway. So I told my mum, it wasn't me on the phone in the bathroom the night before. She paused and looked at me with curiosity or doubt, or maybe even a mix of both, and then she asked, "You sure about that?" I said that I was sure, but she still persisted. She asked if I was telling the truth a bunch more times, and then she told me about what happened last night. She said she woke up in the middle of the night, needing to use the bathroom, and as she approached, she realized that it was occupied. She could see from the light spilling out from the gaps above and below the door. As she got closer, she said she heard a voice. She said it sounded like someone was on the phone in there. She couldn't make out what the voice was saying though, but she said that it just sounded like my voice. She put her ear to the door but couldn't make out any intelligible words. She said she just thought to herself, "Oh well, I guess that was me on the phone to one of my friends." She was annoyed and had to use the other bathroom, and then she went back to bed. When she got up in the morning, she always gets up earlier than I do, she saw that the light was off in the bathroom and thought it must have been me and nothing much more of the situation. She asked my brother if it was him when I said it wasn't me, and he said that it wasn't him either. I mean, he never gets up in the nights anyway. It wasn't my dad. Mum said that he was snoring next to her when she got up that night. So the owner of that murmuring voice in the bathroom remained a mystery. It's still unknown to this day. I mean, for me, it's a really creepy one because my mum swears that it was my voice in the bathroom. She said it was almost as if someone was reciting lines, like an actor or something. It sounds like something was practicing my voice. It's really weird and, to be honest, a little bit frightening. Is there something in my house mimicking me? By the way, my mum's an interesting soul. She said that she saw a UFO when she was young, about my age. High school age, by the way. She said that shortly after we moved into that house, she saw a figure in the house. Some kind of dark silhouette that looked a bit like a ghost. She said it was male. She's usually quite skeptical, apart from these couple of incidents. I guess I'll come back and tell you if something else happens.